Shalom from Jerusalem. I'm Jonathan Hassan. This is TV7's daily update. In today's edition, we're going to discuss the latest on the Lebanese portfolio, what is happening there. We currently do have a state visit, or rather, working visit by Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. Next to that, the Iranians are continuing to protest, keen on freedom from the tyrannical regime in Tehran. We will discuss that at length as well. And of course, we will also try and focus on the implications for the situation in Yemen, potentially. Issues are arising there, of course, between the Saudis and the Emiratis, and that may have also implications for the Houthi-controlled regions, which are, of course, directly assisted by the Islamic Republic of Iran, by China and others. And let us not forget also the Gaza Strip, where we still have one hostage in Hamas captivity since October 7th of 2023, yet returned despite the deadline granted to Hamas as part of President Trump's 20-point plan, which has expired 72 hours following the implementation of the arrangement by the American president, or the declaration thereof, on October 10th of last year. But before all that, let's turn to introduce our experts for today, to include Major General in Reserve Yaakov Amidror, formerly Israel's National Security Advisor, head of the IDF Intelligence Directorate's Research and Assessment Division, currently a distinguished fellow at JINSA, as well as a senior fellow at the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security. It's great to have you with us, General. Also joining us is Brigadier General in Reserve Mark Kimmett, formerly the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Political Military Affairs, along a long list of other positions, of course, to include U.S. Central Command, among others. It's great to see you, General.
Great to be here, Jonathan.
And I'd like to start with General Amidror. Let's start with Lebanon. On the one hand, we have an announcement last night by the commander of the Lebanese armed forces. They have achieved monopoly on arms in southern Lebanon, apparently, something that required the backing of the Lebanese president, Joseph Aoun. I was quite surprised by that announcement, considering the facts on the ground. But nonetheless, it also comes following a report, or a couple of reports, regarding the green light granted by U.S. President Donald Trump to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to engage in a high-intensity operation against the Iranian proxy in Lebanon. What can you tell us about that and the complexities related to this issue?
I don't have a doubt that the Lebanese want to achieve what was promised, that the Hezbollah will be disarmed. It's the interest of Lebanon, it's the interest of the Lebanese people, it's the interest of the Lebanese army. I'm not sure that they are ready to engage, because they understand that they will have to use force, and using force against Hezbollah is something which is very problematic within the Lebanese society. It might be ended with the fight between the army and Hezbollah. And as far as I can assess, it's probably will have to go through another big attack of Israel, which will make clear that A, Hezbollah is weaker, and B, that if Israel is not satisfied from the results of the disarming operation of the Lebanese army, Israel will act. And that will be clear in Beirut and in Hezbollah, and within the Lebanese people. That might lead at the end to the success of the Lebanese army to disarm Hezbollah. I'm not sure that Hezbollah and the Lebanese army are at this point now.
Thank you, General Amidror. General Kimmett, I'd like to hear your take on this. Naturally, also putting into context the American position on the Lebanese armed forces. the expectation of the Beirut government, and the remarks made by U.S. envoy Tom Barrack a couple of weeks now, almost a month and a half ago, when he quite frankly referred to Lebanon as a failed state.
Well, I think, first of all, on the issue of Hezbollah disarmament, until I see the weapons and until I hear that as a policy statement coming out of Hezbollah, I won't be convinced that it'll happen. And I think it's very simple that the people inside of Lebanon, particularly the political class, fear more an outbreak of yet another civil war than they do international criticism and international demands for Hezbollah to disarm. And candidly, I think another Israeli invasion would provide the very justification for Hezbollah to become fully armed again. So if you're sitting in Beirut as a political leader, the last thing you want to do is trigger yet another civil war. And that's why I think there will be perhaps great public announcements about disarmament, but privately, I think we will see Hezbollah remain a very, very strong, very capable militia outside of the control of the central government.
And yet, I do ask myself, in the event that Israel does engage in a high intensity conflict, limited, of course, to the Iranian proxy Hezbollah and its various affiliates, to include Amal and some Islamist Palestinian terror groups that have operated in harmony, supposedly, with the Iranian proxy. If Israel manages to lower its capacity and capabilities to a point of power dominance level that would be weak enough to allow the Lebanese armed forces to engage with it, will the Lebanese reconsider the veracity in which they approach this matter?
I don't know, but I would ask you, Jonathan, do you think the LAF would be willing to finish the job started by the Israelis if the Israelis did another operation to disarm Hezbollah? I think they hate Israel more than they hate Hezbollah.
With that, I cannot disagree. But I will ask General Amidro to provide us also his view on this. General Amidro also taking into account the fact that some 60% of the Lebanese armed forces happen to be Shia, with Shia families in Lebanon, sometimes having one family member affiliated to Hezbollah, another to Amal, and another to the Lebanese armed forces. This complexity does pose a serious question on whether or not this could be successful in disarming organizations that are unwilling to do so.
Look, at the end of the day, we cannot take upon ourselves all the problems of Lebanon. It's very clear for us what is important for us. And what important is that that Hezbollah will not exist as a threat to the state of Israel. For that, either the Lebanese disarm Hezbollah, or Israel will have to act and to reduce the capabilities of Hezbollah by hitting the targets in which Hezbollah is putting all its capabilities. We did it once at the war in Lebanon. It was a very successful night during which we destroyed, I don't know, we are still arguing between 2/3 to 80% of the launching capability of Hezbollah. We have to destroy the other 20%, and maybe other elements of Hezbollah. Unlike many who think that Hezbollah is arming itself and the Iranians are bringing weapons to Lebanon, I think it's very minimal. They have to smuggle it into Syria and then to smuggle it in from Syria to Lebanon. It's not as easy as it was before the collapse of the Syrian regime. But still, Hezbollah is trying whatever it can to rearm itself, and we should stop it, and we should destroy all what was remain in his hands. And again, we prefer that it will be done according to the agreement that we have with the Americans and the Lebanese by the Lebanese army. If it is not, Israel will have to act.
Indeed. Well, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi visited Beirut today, during the course of which he met with the president, Michel Aoun, or rather Joseph Aoun today, and other members of the Lebanese government, the Prime Minister Nawaf Salam and the Parliament Speaker Nabih Berri and others, during the course of which he also addressed the threats emanating out of the United States in the perception of the Ayatollah regime, after President Trump did warn the Iranians not to target their own civilians who are now demonstrating and hoping for freedom. He did say the following. He said, we are ready for any situation. We do not want war, but we are ready for it. We are also ready for negotiations, but negotiations that are based on mutual interests and respect. We all know what that means. General Kimmett, what are we to take out of that? And to what degree is there a disconnect between those remarks and the remarks made by the commander of the armed forces of the Islamic Republic, who suggested to preempt against the United States?
Well, I think we've got to separate those comments that are being directed externally and those comments that are being directed internally. Look, I don't think anybody should fool themselves. We know that the Iranians are in a very weakened position right now, which means they're in a very vulnerable position right now. They're looking for as many friends as they can to be talking to the United States and, by extension, Israel. And the fundamental message is, look, we've got enough problems in our hands right now inside of Iran. For God's sakes, do what you can to keep the devils of Israel and the United States off of our back. I don't think we can understate how vulnerable position Iran is right now, between the protests, between the economic situation, between the fact that they have been, even though rearming, are still significantly weaker than they were this time last year.
As we're speaking, there are almost 600 demonstrations recorded in Iran since the start of this week. That is almost 600 times more than last week alone, or rather 500 times more, when there were only just a couple dozen more than 100. We will see this intensify. The week is not over yet. But General Amidror, what is Israel's calculus in all this story?
I think that what the Iranians are facing is the perfect storm, to use the American phrase. First of all, it began with the collapse of the strategy in which Iran invested. I don't know, someone told me it's $1 trillion, but even if it is half of that. But for sure, 45 years, everything collapsed in more than 12 days, when we destroy Hamas, and then Hezbollah, and then the collapse of the regime in Syria, and then the 12 days during which we flew over Tehran like it is Gaza. And the Iranians understand it. You cannot fool the Iranians about the facts. They didn't deliver. They didn't deliver, not to Hezbollah, not to Hamas, not to Assad. They didn't deliver, not to the people of Tehran. And then take all the other problems, the lack of water. They are not responsible for that. It's good weather, but the results are clear. No enough energy in the winter and the economy. I don't know the numbers of the real versus the dollar is 1,400,000 and something. I mean, it's in the sky. Take all that together, and you have a state in which the leader is very old. The leadership doesn't have any vision that can substitute the failure of the strategy in the Middle East. They don't have something to offer to the new generation, and nothing to show to the old generation that understand that the price is huge. And I don't know what will happen. I mean, it might be ended with nothing, but it might be ended with the collapse of the regime? I really don't know. What's important to see is what is the momentum. If yesterday it was 600 demonstrations, if tomorrow it will be 800, and then it will go on even slowly, but more and more demonstrators will join the wave, and the regime will lose the ability to react to that. That might lead to a collapse of the regime. What does it mean? No one knows, because the regime, the system might be taken by the military guys of the regime, the Al-Quds Force and so on. So I don't know what will happen. I think that Israel should stay out of the public relating to the demonstrations. We should not say anything, and we should not do anything which is in public. Under the table, everything that can be helped the opposition, it's good, but I don't know what Israel can do. We cannot build an opposition in Iran. That should be taken by the Iranian people, and they will have to make the decision, and they will have to pay the price and to gain the fruits at the end. Israel's ability to help them is very minimal. I think that even the Americans' help is not something that can make the difference, in spite of the fact that we should help as much as we can the opposition and to put more problems in front of the regime if we can, if we have something that we can do. Again, under the table, nothing in public.
As the saying goes, if there is a will, there is a way. There is actually a very senior member of Israel's defense establishment. I won't name his name, but I will take a quote he told me once. He said, "Our relationship with the Iranians should be one of opposing teams in water polo. Above the surface, you see the heads and everything looks gentle and kind. Underwater, it is a battle for every part and the most nasty type of game." But General Kimmett, President Trump was quite determined in a statement. If you harm the Iranians, we are ready, locked and loaded, as he put it. The Iranians had caught them off guard. They're very, very concerned about those remarks, particularly also after the Trump administration has conducted its very unique operation against Maduro. Could we see this reenacted?
Very, very unlikely. But the fact remains is we could be sitting here in a week from now, 2 weeks from now, watching the regime fall apart. And we would say, while we might say today it's impossible, 2 weeks from now we'd say, well, it was inevitable. That's how fragile these types of operations are. Regime changes are impossible until they become inevitable. We're at a very interesting point right now, which is even though we're not at the level of unrest from 2022, it could well be that it is nearing, especially if, as General Amador says, it is starting to metastasize. The problem is, if it's at a tipping point, one thing we've learned over the years, which is we don't know what it takes to push it over the tipping point. So I think in many ways we're at that point. We're at the mercy of the Iranian people in terms of doing what they want to do. We really don't know what the tipping point is that we can, I mean, where the tipping point is where we can push this over to the inevitable collapse. And I'm not really certain that we want to be held responsible for tipping it over in the first place. And that's why I think we ought to be very cautious, if I was this administration, to not double down on this notion that President Trump thinks by these types of words that can help push this over the edge.
Perception is a very powerful tool, and if we take into account the perception of the previous, or rather the perception that was held in the region by many totalitarian regimes and others with regard to the United States during the previous administration, its resolve towards certain issues, and then the launch of October 7th with Hamas in the Gaza Strip. October 8th, we had Hezbollah in Lebanon joined the war. We had then on the 17th, the Houthis in Yemen, and of course, Hashtet Shabi and Liwa Zaini Buyun, and so on and so forth, going from Syria to Iraq and elsewhere. Iran thought that Israel would fall. Today, those proxies that served it are not so comfortable in their own skin, I assume. Gerald Amidro, what are we looking, or what can we see these days from Yemen all the way to Iraq and elsewhere when we're talking about those pro-Iranian forces at a time when their masters may no longer be there tomorrow?
I think that it's not just that. I think that unlike before the 7th of October, the Iranians lost the proxies. Even if the Iranians will remain, and we will see the same regime get out of the crisis alive and functioning, they cannot rebuild Hamas. They cannot rebuild Hezbollah. They cannot change the attitude of the Iraqis, regime, politicians towards the Shiite militias. That remember, the Iraqis stopped the launching from Iraq in November 24. Since then, nothing was launched from Iraq into Israel. Why? The Iraqis understood because someone told them that they might pay a huge price. So they put their hands on the Shiite militias and they stopped launching into Israel. The Iranians remain only with the Houthis at the end of the day. This is the only force that they can trust, that they can have the capability, that is ready to take the risk and to help the Iranians. But its capabilities is very limited. Are very limited. These capabilities are very limited, and the Iranians know it because they build it. They know what they can and what they can't. So I think that you ask about the proxies without Iran. I think that the situation of today, the Iran is without the proxies. And this is another very weak point of the regime, because the whole idea was that the proxies will do the job, and we, the Iranians, are far away, 1,500 kilometers away from Israel, immune from any reaction of the Israelis because we are not in the scene. The proxies will do the job. Not anymore. It's now Iran. And Iran by itself has to make the decision and they understand that the reaction will be on Iran, not on the proxy. The proxy is another issue. Israel will decide if he wants to destroy Hamas, to destroy Hezbollah. It is not connected to the war between us and Iran. The Iranians, if they do something, if they give us any legitimacy, if we understand that they are building a threat towards Israel, the reaction will be on the Iranian and the proxies out of the scene. It's 180% different than what the Iranians had in mind about their strategy.
It's
They know that
undoubtedly
the proxies will do the job and Iran will be immune. Now it's Iran that will have to make the job, and the proxies are out of the scene. They cannot react.
It's undoubtedly a paradigm shift. General Kimmett, we don't have very much time left, but I'd like to hear your take, obviously, on Iraq, which is one of your top expertise, as well as the situation in Yemen. Could the Iranians attempt some type of asymmetric warfare to try and redirect attention from itself? Let's say you established, of course, Task Force 153 back in 2009 to combat Somali piracy at the time. Those type of activities were obviously curtailed ultimately, but this is a method that is known to be utilized also by the RGC Navy.
Yeah, I would say we need to still wait until a government is formed and a government is seated. It would appear today that the Iraqis are voting for normalcy, for a second Sudani term that delivers on what the first Sudani term did. Less about ideology, more about infrastructure. But we don't have that government. There hasn't been an announcement of a prime minister. The factions are still having a field day in the media. They don't seem to be getting a lot of traction, but once I see what the new government looks like, once I see who and which parties have significant cabinet positions, where the Hadi al-Amris and where the Abu al-Askaris are sitting in the environment, then I'll be able to make a better judgment about whether this is more of the same, a Sudani 2.0, which is good for Israel, good for America, or if we're seeing a return to the days of Iranian control from Tehran over the day-to-day activities of the Iraqi government. So watch this space.
Absolutely. Well, I'm somewhat skeptical about normalization between Iraq and Israel. Never say never, but Hamad Shia al-Sudani is doing his best to try and consolidate power in a very troublesome region. That's an understatement. You have 10 seconds to respond to that, General Kimmett.
I would only say that if we want to get Sudani off track, the best way to do that is for him to start propagating a notion that he will recognize Israel, normalize with Israel.
Sure. Well, yes, sir. This is all the time that we have for today. The last 10 seconds are yours, General Amidro.
We are watching Iran and we understand that it might be a turning point. I will not be surprised if 2 weeks from now we will see a collapsing regime, but I will not be surprised if 2 months from now we will see the same regime in Tehran. We really don't know, and we should not, how to call it, we should not disturb the opposition to do its job. It's the Iranian decision, and the Iranian should do it. We can help from the outside under the radar, but not more than that. It's, at the end, it's an Iranian decision.
I think the most significant part of the protests this week happened in Qom and other regions that are known as strongholds of the current regime by former supporters of the regime, or rather supporters of the regime in the perception of Western eyes, coming out and demanding regime change. That is not something we've seen before. This is all the time that we have for today. I'd like to thank General Amidrol and General Kimmett for all of your valuable insights. And I'd like to thank all of you at home as well. Until our next edition from here in Jerusalem. Shalom.